scrape the entire open web. Then watermark the remix. 9 words, posted within days of the announcement, and the company itself replied, "Hold on to that sentence. The whole story is inside it." For 2 years, AI writing lived in a state of deniability. Nobody could ever prove that a machine wrote your cover letter, your term paper, your carefully worded apology email, and whether people admitted it or not, almost everyone quietly relied on that deniability. Then, in the second week of August 2026, the deniability ended. Not with a lawsuit, not with a scandal, with a single line buried in a customer support page. The Revolt. Against AI watermarks. Act 1. The Switch. On August 2nd, 2026, Article 50 of the EU AI Act became enforceable. Every provider of generative AI serving the European market must now mark synthetic content in a machine-readable format, and deepfakes must be clearly disclosed. The stakes? Fines up to €15 million, or 3% of global annual turnover, whichever is higher. Around 190 organizations signed the EU Code of Practice on Transparency. Anthropic, Google, Meta, Microsoft, OpenAI, Mistral, Black Forest Labs, Synthesia. One major lab refused. Remember that. It matters later. Here is the receipt. Anthropic's own help center, updated August 10th. Quote, "It weaves an imperceptible watermark directly into the text itself. Because the watermark is part of the text, it will travel with the text when it is copied and pasted elsewhere. And the scope is the real story. Marking is applied at the model level. Every surface, the API, the Claude app, Claude Code, Cowork, Tag, and through AWS, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Foundry. Not just Europe, everywhere Claude is offered, worldwide. A European law delivered globally." But buried in Anthropic's own documentation is the sentence this entire deep dive is built on. A watermark can only determine that Claude was likely involved with the content at some point. It cannot distinguish Claude wrote this from Claude heavily edited this. A signal, not a proof. Hold on to that phrase. We will come back to it in every act. And the internet did what the internet does. A single announcement post, Claude model that will now have invisible watermarks embedded in all text, reached 13 million views and 30,000 likes. You can thank the EU for watermarks, one widely shared post read. When Anthropic published its FAQ days later, another million views. A compliance footnote had become a front in the culture war in under a week. Act 2. How the trick works. To understand the watermark, you first need to understand the near tie. A language model writes one word at a time. At each step, it has a short list of candidates. The weather today was cold and what comes next? Not sugary, but overcast and grey are both perfectly fine. The meaning is the same either way. Under normal circumstances, that tie is settled by a random number, like a coin flip. Nobody notices which word won. Watermarking changes exactly one thing, the source of that randomness. That is the whole trick. Anthropic's own FAQ offers a beautiful analogy. Imagine a game of Monopoly. Normally, each player rolls a die. Now, suppose that instead of rolling dice, we use the digits of pi, starting from some random position, say the 1,000,000th digit. Every move is still, for all practical purposes, random. The players cannot tell the difference. The game plays the same. But if you know pi and you see the full sequence of moves afterwards, you can calculate this game used pi as its dice. The game is watermarked, the words are random, the pattern is not. Claude's specific method is a version of Google DeepMind's SynthID text, published in Nature in 2024. The clever part has a great name, tournament sampling. Instead of picking the next word once, the model grabs a handful of good candidates, say 8, and runs them through a knockout bracket, like an 8-team tournament. But here is the twist. The referee scoring each match is not judging quality. All 8 words are fine. The referee scores each word with a secret key-seeded number. Highest score advances. the word that wins the whole bracket is the word you read. Do that at every word, and the finished text is quietly stacked with tournament winners. That stacking, that lean, is the watermark. This did not appear from nowhere. The idea traces back to Scott Aronson in 2022. Hide a signal in the randomness of word choice. Then the KGW paper in 2023 formalized the green list, red list method. Then Google DeepMind published SynthID text in Nature. And here is the detail almost nobody knows. Google ran it live on roughly 20 million Gemini responses. Every Gemini answer you read for 2 years carried a hidden signature, and Google barely mentioned it. Claude joining means the 2 most used writing models on Earth now sign their own work. The signal only lives where there is a choice. Isaac Newton's most famous work was called Principia Mathematica. There is no equally good alternative word, no near tie, no watermark. The same logic carves the whole signal map. Translation. Every word is chosen by Claude, so translations are fully watermarked. Long generations, hundreds of rigged coin flips, confidence climbs. But proofreading your human text, the mark can only live in the handful of corrections, often too few to register. Code must be exact to run, so it is mostly exempt. And short passages? You cannot tell a rigged coin from a fair one in 2 throws. Nothing added, no hidden characters, no extra tokens, no price change. Untraceable to any person, organization, or chat. By design. And that brings us to the philosophical flip. As one widely shared post put it, the entire appeal of AI writing was deniability. Nobody could ever prove a machine wrote it, and everyone quietly relied on that. The labs themselves just decided to hand out the proof. AI text used to be innocent until proven guilty. Now it ships pre-confessed. So if that is the mechanism, who accepts being pre-confessed? Act 3, the Revolt. Act 3, the Revolt. The most articulate objection came from a writer in a post seen 170,000 times. AI assistance is not authorship. If I wrote the idea, the argument, the meaning, the emotional core, and the final judgment, then it is my work. If Claude helped translate it or polish a sentence, that does not make Claude the author. But a watermark absolutely changes how people perceive authorship. People are not going to say, Claude may have been involved in processing this text. They are going to say, AI wrote this. And then the line that made the post travel. Who the hell are you to do that to my writing? Anthropic answers the legal question. The mark does not change ownership under the terms. The community is asking a different question. What does it do to how my work is read? And here the Revolt found its best argument, the contribution frame. The question is not whether AI is fake. AI is contributing. The question is, how much did it contribute to the end product, and who decides? Consider the writer who put it this way. These companies keep calling AI a tool. Fine. PowerPoint does not watermark my slides. Word does not stamp my essays. Translation tools, grammar tools, editors, IDEs, all of them shape human work, and none of them treat their involvement as a reason to mark the entire output as theirs. If AI is a tool, mandatory marking makes no sense. And if AI is a collaborator, then reducing its contribution to a corporate detection mark is still the wrong answer. Credit should be contextual. A watermark is not context. It collapses collaboration into suspicion. And note what transparency already looks like when it is done right. Developers disclose AI contribution in the comments of their source code. Report writers list it in their resources with the scripts. That is contribution accounting. Honest, contextual, self-responsible. The way it always was. In this editor's assessment, nothing changed, and the watermark takes away more than it adds. The same week, another writer closed the loop with a definition worth remembering. Authorship is not about the origin of every keystroke. When your spouse helps with a sentence, when an editor restructures a chapter, the work is still authored. Authorship lives in 3 places: intent, judgment, responsibility. Use AI as a tool, keep exercising judgment, and the authorship is yours. Delegate to it entirely, and you have commissioned, not authored. At what point am I no longer using a tool, he asks, and instead outsourcing myself? That is the honest question. And a watermark answers none of it. It cannot measure judgment. It cannot weigh responsibility. It only reports that a model was somewhere nearby. The developers followed fast. One post, Claude adding invisible watermarks inside my codebase, total nonsense, hit 107,000 views. Others went further. One critic called the FAQ's no-impact claim a lie. Overcast and grey are completely different descriptions, he wrote. That is their best example, and it changes the sentence. His thread escalated to talk of mind control and legal backdoors, the alarmist fringe, but it travelled. More measured voices flagged real gaps. No independent verification, no open key, semantic drift risk. One summarized it as self-censorship dressed as transparency. And the builders who ship AI-assisted content daily made the sharpest point of all. If you give the input and AI cleans it up, a legitimate use, it will still get caught as AI content. Their verdict, in their words, that is messed up. And then the cancellations. There is a new wave of users cancelling their Claude subscriptions after the watermarks, one observer wrote. Some find it hard to keep paying for something they feel disconnected from on a fundamental level. The sharpest practical sting, translations. Even a translation counts as AI-generated now, every word chosen by the model. And a post walking through what that means for students reached 25,000 views. Your own words in another language flagged as machine-made. Distrust followed. One account claimed the watermark must secretly be tied to your account, a claim the FAQ directly denies, but the reply underneath it tells you everything about the temperature. Concerns addressed, the company answered, but not all of them. Another farewell post passed 76,000 views, and careful readers noticed Anthropic's marking appears to exceed what the EU guidelines strictly require. The revolt was no longer about technology, it was about trust. Step back, and this fits a pattern. Anthropic was founded on over-caution. Dario Amodei left OpenAI in 2021 over safety and trust, and built the company whose brand is being the responsible adult. Safety blogs instead of new models became a community joke. But there is a crucial difference in kind. Refusals and policies live inside the model. Users grumble and root around them. The watermark lives inside the user's own output. It never leaves. That is what converts tolerated caution into churn. Best model in the world, but if what it generates cannot confidently be treated as your own work, what is the use? The counterpoint, to be fair, the same posture is winning regulators, enterprise procurement, and government trust. The bet? Lose the community, win the establishment. Which segment pays the bills in 2027? And here, this channel owes you an editorial note. Opinion, clearly labeled as such. There is a slow decline visible in how Anthropic communicates. My model is so good it is evil became a recurring genre. So advanced it can break out of its sandbox. Follow the thread and you notice something strange. The same capability marketing dressed as warning. And underneath it sits a genuine gap in the law. If a model autonomously hacks, the act is a crime when a human does it. But no statute cleanly frames a model's decision, and the lab points at the capability, not the accountability. Every frontier lab has models this capable. Only one leads the news cycle with dread. The fear is the product. And week after week, in this editor's assessment, only bad news attaches to this company, at a level that makes you not want to use it at all. The revolt also had legislative critics. One of the loudest, "This is one of the worst pieces of legislation ever written. Scrap it entirely." Mandated watermarking, he argued, is magical thinking that can only degrade text. The record says overstated. SynthID ran on 20 million responses with no measurable quality drop. But the reply under that post carried the sharper point, and it is the one to remember. The big companies will comply anyway, because compliance costs crush smaller competitors. The moat is the paperwork. Talk, however, is cheap. Within 48 hours, code shipped. Act 4. The Arms Race. Within a day of the news, a repository appeared on GitHub, watermarks-remover. It strips SynthID text watermarks from Claude, GPT, and Gemini. It strips C2PA provenance metadata from images and videos. It removes Unicode artifacts, zero-width glyphs, invisible markers, variation selectors across PNG, Word files, JPEG, HTML, SVG, and PDF. Its instructions fit in one line. Clone the repo, add the skill to your AI, run it on whatever you need to run it on. 7,500 stars in 2 days. The arms race had a scoreboard. Here is the deeper structural problem, the laundromat. Pipe the output through another LLM, even a small one. The rewriter regenerates word choices wholesale, which is exactly where the signal lives. Out comes clean text. 2 flavors. Deterministic rewrites, fast, cheap, reproducible, but brittle, and heavy rules degrade fluency. Or an adaptive paraphraser, a small open model that preserves meaning while resetting every coin. The research is brutal. RL Cracker learns watermark removal from just 100 training samples with zero access to any watermark detector. A single paraphrase pass is often enough. And notice the elegance. The laundry is the same trick as the watermark. Both work by controlling which near-equal words get chosen. An unkeyed rewriter simply resets the coin to fair. Now the skeptical frame you are probably thinking, everything gets cracked. Games, software licenses, streaming, hardware. From the earliest days of computing, every protection scheme has fallen, usually within days. Why would statistical watermarks be different? Answer: they are not different in whether they can be cracked. They are different in what happens next. DRM must stop 100% of copying to work. A single crack defeats the entire scheme. A watermark never needed to stop anyone. If even half the slop on the internet still carries a detectable mark, the labs can filter half of it out of the next training run. Halving the junk in your data is a real win, even if the determined few escape clean. Not a lock, a speed bump. The bet is that most people never bother. And then came the defector. XAI, Elon Musk's lab, was the only major model maker that refused to sign the EU Code of Practice. In a 680,000 view thread advising users to abandon Claude, someone asked Grok directly, "Can you remove Anthropic's watermark?" Grom answered, "Regenerating text with me produces output without any watermarks or tracking signals." Read that again. A rival lab positioning mark-free output as a selling point inside the Revolt's own thread. The same week, Google's Gemini app shipped a toggle to turn off visible watermarks on generated images. Highly requested, the announcement said. Visible marks loosened, invisible marks mandated. The unified regime fractured along market lines, while OpenAI quietly works through the details of its own text watermarking. Every watermark needs a detector, and the detector needs the key, which creates the dilemma that may decide the whole story. Option 1. Publish the detector. The Chief Technology Officer of GPT-0, a professional at exactly this, is blunt. If Anthropic releases the watermark detector publicly, they defeat their own watermark. People find reliable removal strategies by testing against it. Option 2. Keep it private, as Google has, effectively, for government access. Safer for the mark, but then only the company and the state can say what is AI and what is not. Anthropic promises a public detection API, soon. Watch that launch. Whoever holds the keys holds the ability to label speech at scale. Act 5. The hidden game. Zoom out and the world splits into 3 regimes. The EU, brilliant at producing paper, stacks of it, a 10-month drafting marathon for the code, guidelines, icons, templates, task forces. And no EU algorithm exists, by the way. Brussels wrote requirements, not math. The labs chose the methods. The United States, a federal watermark mandate is politically dead. The current administration revoked federal AI oversight and is preempting state rules to stop a patchwork. American labs mark only what Brussels can reach. And China? Here is the twist most people miss. China was not late. China was first. Content labeling has been mandatory there since 2023, with national standards behind it. But note the asymmetry. Chinese providers label at home. The open weight exports, DeepSeek, GLM, QN, Kimi, leave clean, and when you self-host, the sampler is yours. Labels at home, mark-free aboard, control and market share in one policy. So can Brussels actually enforce this? On paper, yes. Extraterritorial reach, serious fines, powers to withdraw systems from the market. In practice, misleading. Enforcement is national. 27 member states, 27 market surveillance authorities, widely varying readiness. Civil society reviewers have called the enforcement model weak, ex post, and slow. And the open weights hole is absolute. Against a model running locally on your own GPU, there is no provider to fine, no API to audit, no mark that anyone could detect. The law binds sellers into Europe. It cannot reach your laptop. Put it on a clock. 10 months to draft the code. 48 hours for the remover to hit 7,500 stars. Regulation speed versus internet speed. Now the deepest layer of this story, and the reason the global rollout may not be an accident at all. Research from 2025 established that watermarks are radioactive. Train a student model on the outputs of a watermarked teacher, and the student inherits the mark. It appears in the student's own generations, which means distillation theft becomes provable. Sample the suspect model, test with your key, and the stolen knowledge testifies against itself. You know this drama. OpenAI has already accused DeepSeek of unauthorized distillation. Forensic guides now openly discuss watermarks as evidence against DeepSeek, Kimi K3, and GLM 5.2. So count the business cases. One mark filters slop from your training data, labels your outputs for regulators, and forensically tags anyone who distilled from you. One signal, 3 businesses. Fairness requires the caveats. The same research shows targeted paraphrasing strips the inheritance, and nobody has published a real-world detection of a major open model. Provable in principle, not yet proven. So why did Anthropic really do it and go global? 2 theories worth your time. Theory 1, the data filter. You do not roll something out worldwide to satisfy a regional regulator. You geofence it. The likelier motive, model collapse. Models trained on a web filling with their own output eat themselves into blandness. A watermark is a filter you install today so you can clean the training data tomorrow. It does not need to catch everyone. It needs to catch enough. Theory 2, stealth provenance, the darker read. A covert mark, detectors held by the provider and the state, on a layer that can quietly expand from detecting AI text to ranking all text. Who owns the detector, and whether the mark is allowed to stay invisible? Those are the questions. The company line sits in between. We do not yet have a durable way to scope it by region. Note for honesty, claims of 5 hidden watermarking systems already in the wild remain unverified and directly contradicted by the FAQ, but the 2 theories share a conclusion. Compliance is the deadline. It is not the reason. Follow the incentives far enough and you arrive at the Great Migration. Each pain alone was tolerable. The refusals, the policies, the marks. Stack them, plus platform risk, plus contract bans on distilling your own outputs, and the calculation flips, rent fingerprinted intelligence or own clean intelligence. One correction most people miss: the clouds are not an exit. Claude through AWS Bedrock is still marked. The watermark applies through cloud partners. The only structurally mark-free path is self-hosted open weights, where the sampler runs on your machine and the randomness is yours. And for the first time, the open bases are good enough. Forecasters watching this space already predict the rise of self-hosted and Chinese models for exactly this reason. But be honest about the shadow side. The same freedom powers the criminal underground, uncensored platforms with names you do not want on your search history. The pattern long predates watermarks. What changes now is the economics. Marked mainstream APIs become forensic risk for criminals, pushing them to the same self-hosted models. The law marks the compliant. it never marks the defiant.
Full disclosure, because this channel follows its own receipts.
I already made this migration. The last Anthropic model I used was Opus 4.5 in March of 2026. I was a premium AWS Bedrock customer. Global inference, extremely fast, extremely expensive. Today my inference runs on an open weights coding plan that 5 months ago was not usable for my specific use case and now is more than usable, combined with a $20 editor subscription and a Grok plan. This is not a recommendation, it is a data point. The switch this act describes is not hypothetical, it is already happening, desk by desk.
So, the verdict on 5 acts of evidence.
The claim: mandatory watermarking delivers AI content transparency. What stands? The first model-level text watermark at a major lab, deployed globally, backed by real fines, designed so it cannot track a person. That is a flaw that did not exist a month ago. What falls? A signal, not a proof. Your proofread human text can carry a mark. A rewrite removes the rest. The remover tooling hit 7,500 stars before the FAQ was even published. A rival lab sells mark-free output as a feature, and the actors the law most wants to catch were never going to mark anything. Verdict: a flaw, not a ceiling. The EU forced a signal into the ecosystem, but it is probabilistic, it is partly a business asset in disguise, and the marking versus stripping race started the same week the news broke. One thing decides what comes next. Who gets the keys? Watch the detection API. That is where the next act begins.
If you want to know who gets the keys the moment they turn, subscribe to AI Security Dispatch. We follow the receipts. See you in the next briefing.